So this girl writes here that her dad calls her sexy. So what are your thoughts on your dad, your mom, a close relative calling you sexy as a woman? Or maybe if you're a boy. I often tell my son he's handsome, but I don't tell him he's hot. What are your thoughts on this? Drop me a comment, because these lines being blurred about what's appropriate between family members, parents, and children is so disturbing and leaves us without a voice. And you're going to understand why. I've talked about SA before, and this is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about emotional incest. Sometimes when that line is crossed, it can lead to more. Covert incest is the term for it by mental health providers, psychologists, and we're going to go into the definition. But first, I wanted you to see this because she says, I just wanted to go see a movie, but he looked at my cleavage and told me I was sexy. It's not normal to tell your daughter this. Literally nobody cares about it. I told my neighbor and she basically looked at me as if I was overreacting and told me that I needed to get help for my mental illness. And the other part to this is that the behavior has been so normalized across generations that we just overlook it. Someone says the neighbor is super weird and don't talk to them anymore, obviously, about this. But the truth is that it's cross-generational, and it's also not just within your own family. This happens everywhere. Sometimes we think like it's the actual act itself that is the abuse, but it's not just the act. It's the covert undertone of what's being said. When this starts, when you're young, you don't understand where the boundary is. You don't have a voice. What do you say to someone that tells you that when you have a concern that the behavior is not appropriate, that, you know what, you're the one that's crazy? You lose your ability to speak, your intuition is disregarded, and your voice is disregarded. I'm going to bring in a therapist here that you can follow for further information about the topic, but I wanted to bring it here because I think this is some of the issues for some of you out there, for some of us out there that have issues stepping into our authenticity, because you can't do that without a voice. You can't do it without boundaries. And when boundaries are crossed and blurred from an early age to the point of crossing like that line, your sexuality, when you're young, you're developing your sense of self. And so when this happens, you don't even get a chance to develop your sense of self. And I'm going to bring you more on that here in a second. But before we go any further, I want to show you the definition for this. And I love ChatGPT. I did a quick search on ChatGPT and asked it, please define this for me. And the definition of covert incest is also known as emotional incest. It's a form of psychological boundary violation in which a parent or caregiver seeks emotional support or companionship from their child in a way that's inappropriate for the parent-child relationship. While this does not involve physical or contact, it mimics the dynamic of a romantic or adult partnership, creating confusion, guilt, and emotional burden for a child. So that weird feeling that you get when someone makes a comment or has had a request of you as a child, maybe sharing their ex problems with you as a child, or maybe sharing their relationship issues with you as a child, leaves a blurred boundary. And it happens when parents or close relatives treat a child like a partner, therapist, or emotional caretaker, sharing inappropriate emotional details, leaning on them for comfort, or expecting them to fulfill adult roles. It's almost like grooming you as the child to behave like the parent to them. And then sometimes it's just using you as an emotional filler. Like usually, like if the parents are their relationships aren't if the parents' relationship, mom and dad's relationship, is not going well, they will use, like the mom will use the boy, if she has a boy, to fill the emotional needs that the other partners, that the dad is not filling, or the dad will use the daughter for the emotion to fill the emotional needs. Here's some key features. I just want you to understand what this is, because I want you to understand why I'm bringing this to you here. And I am going to provide you with a licensed mental health professional that you can follow on YouTube who discusses this at a higher level. Here's the key features. Emotional enmeshment. The child is expected to meet the emotional needs of the parent. Loneliness, validation, self-worth. So now the parent is lonely because they're not getting along. They want you to fill that gap. Role reversal. The child becomes the caretaker, confidant, or partner to the adult. And that's not supposed to be, right? You need their help. And so when this happens, you don't get to develop. You don't get the care that you need because you're constantly in the caregiver role yourself. Boundary violations. Conversations or behaviors blur the line between parent-child and adult-adult dynamic. Correct. You're hearing topics and things that you shouldn't be hearing at a child. You shouldn't be the third party in your parents' relationship. But often that's what happens, and it blurs the line. It's a boundary violation. That's why it's so hard to have boundaries within your relationship. People get involved in your relationship and you don't know where to draw the line because you've not seen it done before. Emotional dependency. The adult relies excessively on the child for emotional regulation, often ignoring the child's developmental needs. Correct. I'm going to share someone with you that you can go check out. One of the people that I watch, she's the crappy childhood fairy. I like her. And then I have another licensed mental health professional for you. Also, but you can look up the crappy childhood fairy. She's pretty awesome. Guilt and obligation. The child may feel guilty for having their own needs, emotions, and independence. Correct. So then you start to stifle, like, you wonder why you grow up, right? And then you're like taking care of everybody else. You become the people pleaser. And so your needs no longer matter because you learn to be invisible to everyone because you're just there trying to fill everyone's needs. And then when you get into other relationships, whether it's with a spouse or when you have your own household or whatever, you become the people pleaser in the household and your needs are never met. Because you're not even asking to get your needs met. Actually, you're anticipating where everybody else needs to have their needs met so that you can fill the gap. I'm going to give you some examples of when it's a mother that's doing this with a child. A mother tells her daughter about her romantic problems, her actual frustrations, treating her like a best friend. She calls her son the only man who's ever truly loved her. She becomes jealous, passive, aggressive when a child has other emotional attachments, partners, or friends. The daughter or son become her emotional crutch and feel responsible for her well-being. When it's the father, overly praises his daughter, her looks, and treats her like his girl, his queen. His girl, his queen should be his wife, not his daughter. Right? Yeah. He discusses inappropriate topics like marriage problems or emotional loneliness with her. He expects her to support him emotionally while ignoring her developmental needs. She needs to be emotionally supported so that she can know how to emotionally regulate and set boundaries with people. But now the boundaries are blurred. The daughter feels like she's married to her dad, emotionally guilt-ridden when trying to set boundaries. You should not be guilt-ridden when setting boundaries. I've read some things here where the dad actually goes, "Oh, you're hot," and smacks his daughter on the butt. Inappropriate. That's absolutely inappropriate. With sons are told they are the man of the house emotionally or expected to console a parent after divorce or abuse. They feel pressure to take care of the parent's feelings, manage the home, or be strong for the family. They grow up feeling emotionally responsible for others and may struggle with vulnerability. Yeah, this is for men too. Like, they don't know how to speak their needs because they're constantly filling the needs of others. When it's a close relative, uncle, aunt, grandparent, the dynamic may include confiding in the child about adult matters like money, ex, resentment, emotional wounds. They may guilt the child into attention, loyalty, and secrecy. These relationships foster confusion, anxiety, and long-term relational dysfunction. And the issue with this is that if there's already this tendency, this can further move on to be actual incest. I'm using actual because I don't want to get shadow banned on YouTube. and they have a thing about certain words. So covert incest is not about this. It's about misplaced emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy is the whole part of your romantic relationship. We are not in romantic relationships with our parents, so there should be a differentiation. And I'm bringing this to you because I think that we need to be aware. Also, if we've had blurred boundaries, where are we crossing that boundary with our own children? Are we crossing that boundary? Do we need to make sure that we're not? Because we don't want this generational dysfunction to continue, because you've seen the damage that it's done to you as far as finding your voice, being able to set boundaries. And this is not the only thing, but it's one of the things that can be an issue. So I'm bringing it here so that you can be aware and understand that you're not losing your mind, that this is a thing. Long-term effects include codependency. So now you become codependent on your parent. Like, you can't move without your parent. They can't move without you. When you have a relationship now, when you have your partner, now they start to get involved in your relationship and cause problems in your relationship because there's jealousy that occurs, because they're watching you have that emotional attachment that they've gained to you, that inappropriate emotional attachment. You're now giving it to somebody else. It's emotional incest. This causes poor boundaries in relationships. We've talked about that, and we talk about boundaries a lot here. And it's one of the things that I say that we have to start learning to set, because only then, when we start to set boundaries, even if it's hard, that's when you can start to see like where these issues are arising, where they've come from. And this is not to blame anyone, because I am sure if your parents were emotionally incestuous with you and you had to deal with some of these things, that they probably dealt with the same. The whole idea at this point is to recognize it, deal with it, stop it. And it's going to be hard because there's codependency, and whenever there's codependency, people are not happy when you start to shut off the codependency. There's guilt around autonomy. Like, if you set yourself apart, if you'll notice, one of the effects that you will see is that when you start to set yourself apart, that's why I talk about being authentically you here. Because when you start to set yourself apart from the people where this is happening, right? This emotional incest, this covert incest is happening. There's guilt around like stepping away and not doing what they want, because you've been in a weird way emotionally tied to them. You don't have a romantic relationship with them, but you're almost entangled to them in that way. Difficulty trusting others. Yes, definitely you will, because you become afraid to, I think anyway, that you become afraid to get too over entangled, because that codependency and the poor boundaries, you don't really know what's appropriate and what's not. If your dad can smack you on your ass and it's okay, can the neighbor do it? Where is the boundary? Where does it stop? Can an uncle do it? Can your aunt do it? Right? It's like, where's that boundary? Because we do have a personal space, right? Like 2 to 3 feet is like from other people is like your personal space. So when people are violating that space without your permission, whether it's a parent or not, there's a lot to be said about that. Right? Attraction to emotionally unable or narcissistic partners. Here's the kicker. All of these are bad, but then you start to be attracted to people who are unavailable, because you're the people pleaser. You're the one always giving. You can't even see where you're not getting back what you're putting out. The narcissist will be attracted to you, and you will be attracted to them because they want and you're giving. You're there to give. You're there to people please. I'm bringing this to your attention so that you can be careful. There's a survivors site. You can check it out. It's called I'm gonna pull it up here for you. Give me 1 second. This video today is not about placing blame, because I think that this is generational, but it's about stopping the cycle and recognizing the cycle. Here's the website I was telling you about, the link to Reddit. It's called Covert Incest, and they mention here that covert sexual abuse is more insidious than blatant sexual abuse. Thus, identifying it is more difficult because the nature of the action is disguised. The offender acts as if they're doing something non-sexual when in fact it is. Here's a girl that went, and went to a therapist, and she was told that what her mom did was abuse. And here it is. My mother did things like change in front of me, kiss me on the mouth, watch me go into the bathroom and comment on my body, made jokes. She would tell me my body, that she would sell my exy body to whatever, to ISIS, and get paid in gold. But she also had times where she asked me to, you can read it for yourself, right? At an appropriate age, had me massage cream on her blank blank. This is to say that whenever you have the emotional incest is there already, it can and sometimes does lead to more insidious acts. You can read this for yourself. I don't have to read it to you. We're not going to go through all of this because some of this is very explicit. It's just this behavior that's disguised, and it causes so much harm that we don't realize, right? So it's just a matter of putting a stop to it. What I wanted to do is, here he is right here. So I have this therapist here. He's on YouTube. His name is Brad Shore. He's a licensed mental family therapist. I'm going to play a little bit of what he has to say.
So emotional incest, let me talk about that for a second. And by the way, I've done a couple other videos on emotional incest. So if you want to look at those, do so after this video. People seem to gravitate towards them more than some other videos I've made, which kind of...
We're going to go through. So he has other videos that you can watch too, but we're going to go.
Somebody who's supposed to be there to answer this adult woman's needs. And because she's in an unhappy marriage with this, and it's not discussed enough in the media and so on.
There we go.
People want to know. Emotional incest is when you're smothered by a parent, emotionally smothered by a parent, where they take you over quite typically because they're in a bad marriage, for example. That's very common. And let's say it's a mother, and because she's in an unhappy marriage with her husband, she takes over one of her children, in this case I'll just say a boy, to be her little mini husband. So this child becomes somebody who's supposed to be there to answer this adult woman's needs and also hear her adult problems and help her in her adult life. And what that does is thwarts the development of the child. It thwarts the development because the identity and what that child is all about and how they're supposed to grow up gets put on hold because their thought process, their desire, their whole essence for being is there to support the parent, because that's the message that they're getting. It can start at a very early age. And by the way, emotional incest can happen from either a father to a son or daughter, or from a mother to a son or daughter. So let's get started with the 12 signs that you may be a victim of emotional incest. One is that you're aware that you're a people pleaser and you're focused more on other people's needs and other people's feelings. So that's a big one because you're trained that way as a little kid, right? You're focused on your mother's or your father's needs. They're using you in a way. And the use is sort of conditional because they're not really wanting to know the real you. They're just using you as a pawn to satisfy their ego, their adult needs. So as a child grows up from that, they naturally just keep doing that. They focus on other people's needs because that's how they're trained, and you become a people pleaser because you're not aware. Sometimes you're very dissociated from your own feelings and needs.
Do you see why I'm bringing this to you? Because many of us who have trouble stepping into our authenticity are people pleasers, and sometimes we can't pinpoint exactly where it came from. And so let's go. Number two,
you want to be invisible. You want to be a fly on the wall. And that's because as a child growing up, satisfying the parents' needs, nobody really wanted to know your opinion. And you certainly didn't want to be in the spotlight because you're not used to that. So you just kind of want to blend in and leave everything alone because that's what your role is trained for. And if all of a sudden you have to speak or you have to get up in front of people and talk or share or be yourself, which by the way, you really don't know who you are because you haven't had the time to develop to understand who you are, you may freeze or freak out, or you're terrified because you're not used to being in the spotlight. You're not used to having eyes on you. You're always there just being the eyes for your parent, focused on your parent. So when it's switched around a little bit, it's very difficult. Number three.
We're going to go to number three, and after number three, I'm going to leave it alone because you're going to start to see a theme for some things that I talk about on this channel and how this kind of emotional interaction and abuse can lead to this. So we're going to play number three, and then drop me a comment. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I will be leaving the link for Brad's YouTube channel in the description box so you can access, because I think it's really important for us to understand to heal this so that we're not repeating the cycle, and so that we understand exactly why we feel the way we do and why we have the issues we do, maybe why we even have issues in our relationships.
You don't like advocating for yourself. You want others to kind of take the lead. And that ties into what I just said in number 2. But advocating for yourself is a little bit different, because we have to advocate for ourselves in life. We have to know when to stand up for ourselves, have healthy boundaries. The boundaries have all been blurred. So you're not a good advocate for yourself. You don't look out for your own needs, because you're always thinking ahead, trying to anticipate what you can do for other people, because that's what you had to do for your mother or father. And in doing that, you lost your voice. Whoa, the voice. That's very symbolic. That's a lot, right? To not have a voice in terms of, and I'm not talking about the literal voice making sounds out of your mouth. No, a voice in terms of standing up for yourself and setting boundaries and letting people know there's a you there. There's a you there. The you that's been sort of crushed and pushed aside. There is that you there, but it needs to be found. And that sometimes takes a lot of work. It can take therapy for many years, but it's worth it in the long run. Number 4 is you have a difficult time in relationships. And that's because as you mature and grow up, you don't understand what a healthy relationship is, because it wasn't modeled for you. So you're either bringing with you that childhood baggage, which is not going to be helpful, or you're either trying to play the little boy or the little girl in the relationship because that's what you had to do for your parent. So relationships need a lot more than just being a little boy or little girl. We know that, right? Relationships can be very challenging, and you have to be honest and open and vulnerable. And because a child who's a victim of emotional incest hasn't developed those skills yet, they may have a hard time finding and staying in a relationship.
All right, so I'm gonna drop his link in the description box. You can see already some of the things that I talk about, and it's important to bring up why these things happen. And so that's why I'm starting to bring these topics out, things that occur in your childhood, and why it's important to heal those childhood wounds. And therapy is a good place to start. And if you're not ready to go see a therapist, maybe this Brad's website is a good place to start. Drop me a comment, drop me a heart. Drop me a heart in the comments. Show me some love. In the comments, show me some love, because I'm showing you love. But yeah, this is kind of hard. I don't want to show like too much from this subreddit. I'll drop the link for the subreddit also, so that you can check it out for yourself. And happy healing. And I will see you in the next one.